All right, hello and welcome back to the final part of our multispec basics tutorial. In this episode, we're going to be performing a classification on the images we've been working on in the previous episodes with a Gaussian maximum likelihood. And to do that, it's going to take a few steps, but it's all going to be relatively simple. So the first step we need to take care of, we need to actually select our features. So to do that, we're going to go to Processor, Feature Selection, and then we're just going to open this up right here. And for our distance measure, for our basic needs, we're going to select Transform Divergence. And then under channels, we're going to go with all available, number of channels, under channel combinations, all possible, and leave everything else as default. Right here, you'll see write results to. And the one that's checked by default is write it just to the project text window, which is that little text box we talked about earlier. Also, if you want to keep your results around a little more permanently on your machine, you can also check this right here and write it to a file on your hard drive. For this though, we're not going to need to do that because this is just going to be a quick one and done. But if you're working on a longer project and would like to keep your results around, that's an easy way to do it. So we're going to go ahead and click OK. It's going to do its thing, and then we can pop this little window right back up. So this is going to give us the information for our interclass distance measures, using a variety of class and channel combinations. Generally, which one of these you're going to pick is going to depend heavily on what you're doing and how many channels you're using. For our basic needs, where we want to use all of the channels, all four, we're going to go with this one right down here, where it's using every single channel. And our min is above 1900, our average is also above 1900, and our max is 1993. When you're doing this, you want your interclass distance measure to be at or above 1900. So if you're not getting that, if the combination you want, it just means you're going to have to mess around if the classes we defined earlier. But for our needs, this one right here is going to work for us just fine. Oh, and also I should mention, when you are doing classifications, it's generally regarded that the fewer channels you're using, the better results you're going to get. But since we're already using so few channels right now, we can go ahead and use all four. Really, that kind of ruling only really comes into play when you're using images with many channels, up anywhere from like 7, 9, or even more if you're using hyperspectral. All right. But like I said, for this will work just fine. All right, so our next step, we're going to actually do our classification. So to do that, we're going to go down here to Process or Classify, and now we're going to select our procedure. And under procedure, you'll see a bunch of different classification types, like Gaussian maximum likelihood, which is one we're going to be doing. But you've also got stuff like support vector machine, k nearest neighbor, minimum Euclidean distance, and all of that. The process for all these is going to be pretty similar, especially for support vector machines. And support vector machines is also a little simpler since you won't need to do your feature extraction. But for right now, like I said, let's focus on good old GML. So for channels, this is where you can select which channels you're going to be wanting to use. Important if we go back to the feature selection, if you want to make sure you're only using specific channels. But like I said, since we're using all of them, we're just going to go with all available. Classify, this is where you're going to be able to set, if you only want to classify one or two of the classes you've created, you'll be able to set that here. Again though, we're going to classify everything. Make sure training resubstitution is checked. Also ensure that test areas holdout is checked. What this is going to do, this is going to rate our accuracy statistics to the text window. So definitely make sure that's checked so we can actually look and see how well we did at the end. Then everything else is fine. We're all good to leave the area to classify. This is where you set the extent if you only want a certain part of your image classified. But like I said, we're all good to do the whole thing. Classes, you can set those. Class weights are equal. Now you're going to want to make sure to write your classification results to disk. And here you'll be able to check which file type you're going to want it saved as. We're going to go with the good old trusty GeoTIFF because it's easy to use. It's easy to use, and there's no lossy compression for it, or at least none to the point where it's really going to affect what we're doing. Then after that, we're all good to leave everything else as is. We'll hit OK. And now this window is going to pop up, and this is just asking like, hey, where do we want to save our classification to? I've already run this once before, So I'm just going to overwrite this image right here, but you can define whatever name you want down in the directory, all in this little box. Yep, we're going to replace it. And now we're going to run our classification. Multispec is going to do its thing. And since GML is usually pretty fast, this won't take too long at all. Then after it's done, we'll be able to check our little window right here. And this is going to give all the results for our classification. This will give our little confusion matrix, basically talking about our reference accuracy. So we're running about all in the 90s, which is pretty dang good. Number of samples in class, all this, and our reliability accuracy. So for class 1, 99, class 2, 73, which is not the greatest, and then about 99.7 for forest. It gives our kappa statistics and everything like that. So that's all pretty good. If you need this for your records, you can just go ahead and just highlight it all, copy it, and put it in a text document. But more importantly, let's actually get to the fun part and actually look at our output, and we'll be able to find that exactly where we saved it. And there we go. And that's our classification. Now, and it's also important to note when we're setting up our classify, you can also set a custom color palette. But if you leave it by default, Multispec will just choose a couple colors at random and assign them to the class. But I think this one's pretty easy to read. I think we've accomplished what we set out to do. So I just wanted to say thank you all for watching this tutorial series, and I hope you all have a wonderful day and stay safe.